All right, let's get it. Welcome into the Voice of College Football and another Tuesday, and that means this time of year, another college football playoff rankings reveal from the committee. What will they give us following what we saw in week 12? We are headed toward week 13. It's rivalry week. We're all excited. We're all pumped. We're all hyped. This is the climax. This is the pinnacle of the college football season right here. Rivalry week into conference championship weekend. All right, let's run down where we stand on a number of fronts. I think probably the most significant event, unfortunately, from this past weekend was Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis being knocked out for the season. And now Tate Rodemaker is going to be the guy that's going to be called upon to lead Florida State this Saturday against Florida, who's also having to go to a backup quarterback since Graham Mertz was injured. And I believe he's not going to be able to go when he hurt his collarbone. So Florida State, and the Seminoles, this isn't even in question. They have lost one of the best starting quarterbacks in college football, Jordan Travis. The committee has said since year one, going all the way back, 10 full football seasons, back to 2014, in the very first college football playoff situation that we had this committee, that major injuries would be taken into consideration. Now, fortunately for Ohio State in that particular year, once JT Barrett was hurt against Michigan, Cardell Jones had one game to prove that he was a capable quarterback and could lead Ohio State to a big win. Of course, that's what happened, and the rest is history. Jordan Travis goes down. Tate Rodemaker comes in against North Alabama. Ironically, Jordan Travis and the Seminoles were down 13-0 to an FCS school, and Tate Rodemaker came in, and Florida State, of course, took control and blew them out by 45. Now they've got a game on the road taking on the Florida Gators, and then an ACC championship game against Louisville. All right, here we go. The rankings are being revealed. Liberty jumps in here 11-0 at number 25. Clemson at 24. They've ripped off 4 consecutive wins. Tulane is at number 23 at 10-1. North Carolina State 8-3. And NC State, I also have them ranked in my top 25, as I do Clemson as well. Now, Tennessee is still in the top 25 in the college football playoff rankings, dropping 3 spots from 18 to 21 after Tennessee at 7-4 lost to Georgia by 4 touchdowns, following losing to Missouri the previous week by 4 touchdowns. I do not have Tennessee ranked in my top 25. That actually makes sense. But the Vols are hanging in the top 25. All right, we've got Oklahoma State at number 20. Of course, the Cowboys 2 weeks ago were pummeled by UCF 45-3, but rebounded with a win this past weekend. Kansas State at number 19. Now, what's curious there is Oklahoma State defeated Kansas State. They have the same record, but the committee is opting for the Wildcats over the Cowboys. Notre Dame at 18. Of course, they finish up their season against Stanford. No conference for them. Iowa at 9-2 actually dropped 2 spots after a close win, but that's all that Iowa does, is win close games against marginal teams. And they defeated Illinois 15-13. So Iowa takes a hit there, dropping to number 17. We see Oregon State, of course, they lost to Washington. So Oregon State, this is what doesn't make sense. Oregon State played Washington, who was supposed to be one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. They are one of only 5 major undefeated teams. That game was 22-20, and Oregon State drops by 5 spots. They have dropped further than anybody else. They dropped further than Tennessee did, losing to Georgia by 4 touchdowns. Okay, we've got Arizona at number 15, LSU at 14. They took a couple spot hikes there. Oklahoma had a close game against BYU on the road, in which Dylan Gabriel was hurt about halfway through the game after throwing 2 touchdowns. OU at number 13, Ole Miss at number 12. They had an FCS opponent this past weekend. And, of course, Penn State out of the Big Ten championship race at number 11. and Penn State had a 27-6 win over Rutgers. So a lot of 9-2 teams there, 8-3 teams with LSU and Arizona. And of course, the Wildcats are one of the hottest teams in college football. Certainly, man, in recent weeks, they've just looked great. They did get taken to the wire by a pretty bad Colorado team 2 weeks ago, but Arizona with another win this past weekend. Now they go into their rivalry game with an opportunity, Jed Fish and the Arizona Wildcats, of finishing 9-3. And if Oregon should lose to Oregon State, it creates a logjam of 2 lost teams in the Pac-12, which would include Arizona and Oregon. And unfortunately, those 2 teams did not play this season. So we will have to go to the tiebreaker bullet points to figure out who would make it out of the Pac-12 to face Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. Now, everyone's expecting Oregon as an 11-point favorite to defeat the Beavs, but stranger things have happened, certainly. And that Oregon State team, again, we've made it through the first 15 of the top 25, and Oregon State dropped the most. And they may have had the most impressive game of all the 10 teams that we've seen thus far, and they've dropped the most. All right. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at my rankings to see where I've got Oregon State, but I don't have them as low as 16. I do not believe I've got them more in the 13 range. Number 10 is Louisville. Of course, the Cardinals coming off a loss, practically a near loss to Miami. They were trailing much of that game. They won 38-31. And so the Cardinals have a game against Kentucky, of course, before going to the ACC championship game. So Louisville would be that team. They're the TCU of this year. Missouri at number 9, 9-2. I've got a ton of respect for Mizzou. They've been good. They've been really solid. They've got a loss to LSU by 10 points that went down to the wire. And they've got a loss to Georgia. Of course, they played them well in Athens between the hedges by 9 points. And I think from here on out, the next few spots are going to stay chalk. Alabama at 8. They're going to keep them behind Texas. And then it's going to be awfully interesting if Alabama is able to beat Georgia as to whether they are going to flip-flop Alabama and Texas despite the head-to-head. Then we've got Texas at number 7. And we're going to have Oregon at 6. I would believe that that's going to stay the same. Oregon's coming off a rout of Arizona State. And, of course, Texas, their win was a workmanlike win on the road against Iowa State 26-16. That game was a one-score game until maybe 5-6 minutes left in the game. And let's get to the rest of the top 25 here at number 6. That's got to be Oregon. And then interpreting what Michigan did. That's really what needs to happen here, is basically interpreting what Michigan did. The committee should be holding off on any judgment of Florida State until after seeing Tate Rodemaker and seeing what he does. And I got to admit, I don't even remember what the rankings were last week. I think it was Washington at 5. I would think that Washington's got to jump. Mike Rotundo still does not have any idea how I do my rankings. And so, Mike, please call the show sometime. I will explain my rankings. I guess I'm going to have to do that to you directly. Oh, my goodness. I love how fan bases get offended by their teams. Like, I could make the most outlandish rankings imaginable. They could be completely nonsensical. And as long as I've got your team where you want them, then you don't care about anything else. I could be the complete moron, and I could have Kansas State number 3 and Baylor number 17 and whatever. And people that have and are so locked into their one team and just making sure that their team gets ranked correctly, even if they don't know what they're talking about, they're just concerned with that. Yes, Mike, thank you for doing that. But yeah, people just don't get it. All right, let's get to the top 5 here. I'm guessing it's going to go Florida State 5, Washington 4, Michigan's going to stay at 3, Ohio State 2, and Georgia 1. Michigan was 3 last week. Do they take a hit? I don't think that was such a marginal win that they need to take a hit for that. But we'll see. We'll see what the committee has to say. Actually, I'm not going to see what the committee has to say because I can't listen to this because I'll get hit for copyright. What I need to do tonight, that just reminded myself that I need to listen to the committee teleconference. So what I need to jump on when that's available. Let's see when that's available. The committee teleconference. Oh man, I've got to weed through all these emails to try to find it. I do have to find that though. I need to listen to that. I haven't done it in the past. And there it is. College Football Playoff Committee Media Advisory. Okay, so that's going to be on while we're on, but I can go back, I think, and listen to it. Transcripts of the teleconference along with the downloadable audio file will be made available at college. Okay, there we go. Very nice. So we will check into that. All right, here we are with, they're doing the reverse deal on us this week. They're showing us 1 and 2 first. And then we've got Georgia, Ohio State. It's going to be Michigan 3, I would think. I don't think they stumbled that badly against Maryland. It wasn't the most impressive performance in the world against a marginal team, but still, it's only one data point. And there's Michigan at number 3. And here's where we're going to see a bit of a flip, I believe, with Washington jumping to 4. You got to give them some level of push with a nice win against Oregon State. It wasn't a dominant win, but that's a really good Oregon State team. And you guys may remember better than I did. Maybe Washington was number 4 last week. I thought they were 5. Okay, we're waiting and waiting and waiting. Dependent fanatic, Florida State lost Travis. That changes things. It shouldn't. It should not change anything. Nothing. 0. Nothing should change until we watch Florida State play football. That would be criminal. You do not do that. There we go. Washington at 4 and Florida State drops the spot to number 5. That makes sense. I believe I'm on board with that. I think that's what my rankings are. So there we go. I've got Washington ahead of Florida State as well. All right, Ohio State and Michigan play. So one of them gets the bid if they can go on to win the Big Ten championship game, and the other one will get knocked out. And then the other 4 are right there as well. All right, let's get right to it. We got calls coming in. We will run down the rankings, everything that we think about them, and want to hear from all of you. Michael, what's going on tonight?
Not much. Hey, Mark, before we get to the rankings and stuff like that, did you get a chance to see the deal with the news from Michigan State today, how they was really wanting to get rid of Mel Tucker before the season even started?
No, I did not see that. Where was that reported?
I seen it on your former employer on the bottom line
Okay.
and stuff like that. But how surprised are you? I was thinking before the top 5 was revealed, even before you came on and stuff. That's how I thought it was going to happen. Washington and Florida State was going to flip flop, but I guess not having Jordan Travis did make a big difference for the rest of the season.
Is it going to make a difference?
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out.
Of course it
Was
is.
it because it was a tighter game Saturday up in Corvallis? That's why they leapfrogged them, or what's your take?
My take is that Washington played one of the top 15 teams in the country on the road and won the game. Therefore, those wins are surpassing what Florida State brings to the table. I don't think this ranking has anything to do with Jordan Travis. Now, it may in the future, but I don't believe that this one does. This is all about Washington going to Corvallis and winning.
Fair point. How God's Greeners is Tennessee still ranked?
You got me. Not that it matters, but it does matter because the committee's supposed to be doing a fine job and supposed to be doing the right job from top to bottom. I can't explain it myself. Tennessee has defeated who? Let's see.
Nobody.
Their best win. I got a whole spreadsheet that I do, and I add the most recent games and when I do my top 25, and I was looking at Tennessee and there was no way I could rank them. Yeah, their best wins, Kentucky's 6-5. Texas A&M 7-4. Those are their 2 best wins. Texas A&M 7-4, Kentucky 6-5. And had they played better in their losses, then I could back them up. But they're 7-4, so they've got the worst record of anybody in the top 25, tied for the worst. And they just got blown out by 4 touchdowns the last 2 weekends. I don't see it. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, not bad and stuff like that. Okay, hey, I got to email you about something. Probably either be later tonight or tomorrow. So there's a couple things I want to talk to you about.
That sounds good.
Out there and stuff like that. But anyway, you got a bazillion colors. Oh, hey, people, be with me. Go to petition.org and start a petition for Mark to be the new CFP commissioner. Please.
Oh, goodness.
For the life of us.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, okay. What would you rather be, the commissioner of the college football play or the NCAA?
The college football playoff. Yeah, I don't want to deal with investigating schools. That does not sound fun.
Okay, here you go. You can be the president of the NCAA. I can be the chairman for the media communications and stuff like that. Erica, Greenshield, Ford, and John, they can be your investigations department.
So you're not allowing me to make those selections? You've made them. You really run the NCAA. If that's the case.
No. That's just I'm like your PR person. That's your platform of why you're going to be the. Because every good president has to have a good PR person, right?
I could use one, sure.
All right, fair enough. Hey, Mark, seriously though, thanks again. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, man.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. Have a good night. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football, and we're going to break down these rankings. We'll go one by one and see if they make sense. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's on your mind?
All right. I didn't think you could hear me. I don't want to waste your time, Mark. You gave me a whole lot of time the other day, so I just, I don't know that I understand, and I don't know that maybe you can't help me with it. I don't know if you understand it either, because don't we have to kind of get in the heads of each committee member to, unless they really have something like a formula or something they can show us that, and maybe would it be too far out of line really for them to maybe make them do a formula so we kind of know? I mean, I'm sure they look at a lot of different things, but they can't just put whoever they want in there and not. I mean, isn't that kind of a conflict of interest?
So you make some good points here, Chris, but here's the deal. Most of what they do, they tell us is objective. It's based on metrics, scores, analytics, all of that. But there is also a subjective nature to it, where they have football people in the room and they talk about how good these teams are and how good they look. It's called the eyeball test. And so they
Okay.
are taking that into consideration.
Well, I mean, I'll even put a plug in for Tennessee. I don't know. They might do okay. If even let's just say, I'm not saying if you didn't, I know they're nowhere close to being in the playoff, but you give them a chance. Heck, they might do okay. I mean, it's like, I know that there's a lot of things you have to weigh into consideration, but I guess the problem I'm having with it, are they really looking at everything they need to look at, or what is it they're looking at exactly? Is it that they like the way Tennessee plays maybe in certain situations, or, I mean, I just kind of like to know what the thinking is, wouldn't you?
They are evaluating what they believe are and placing the 25 best resumes in the country, combined with an eye toward their performance. So some of
Okay.
it's not, it can't all be quantified. The way they're doing it, you want it to all to be quantified. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but they state that much of what they do can be quantified, but some of it can't be.
Well, I don't know. I guess my point is, or my objection, I guess, is if it's just about who they think should go, I mean, they could almost have anybody do that. You don't need a committee for that. Well, do you?
Well,
You
they're
don't
trying to
need-
safeguard themselves by having 13 people. So think of it this way. If you were on a committee with me and we chose 11 other people and we believed that all of us at least were going to do our very best to select the best teams, we would all have a different way of doing it. But when you put us all together, they have to come out with a consensus, and that's what it is. And I don't know if this is strictly, they have never answered this question, Chris. They've never answered this question as to whether, when it comes down to their final rankings here that they make known to the public, whether they all just vote and then they put the vote together just like the AP poll, and this is what we get.
Well, don't you think the AP poll might be a little bit more reliable? I mean, I don't know. I guess you don't. Okay.
No, I don't. Not based on what I've seen for the last 45 years of my life. No, I think that they're doing a better job than the AP poll.
Oh, okay.
But I will say that they're not being transparent about how they arrive at these rankings. You know what they'll tell us, because they have, that this is some kind of consensus. And of course, it's not a consensus. They've got 13 people that all have different opinions.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Where did you say they had Oregon State? I could actually see maybe a case for putting Oregon State pretty high up there, even if they lost, because they came real close to beating Washington. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
this is what I don't understand, Chris. Exactly, is that Oregon State played their number 4 team in the country, Washington, and played them within 2 points, 22-20, and they dropped more than any team in the top 25.
Oh, I didn't. Well, I don't know. I guess my point is I could kind of see if they didn't drop that much, maybe keeping them up there because, they're a good team. I mean, so I guess my question would be is they must not be basing it basically on the way the game went as much as what they think of the way the win went, the way they played in the game, maybe the way they played that week. Is that kind of what they're doing it?
Well, they shouldn't be just going on last week's.
Well, I don't know what they're looking at. That's kind of my point. Is like they could have beaten
a complete resume evaluation.
And
that's something else they've never been able to answer, is whether they are ranking these teams based on how good they believe they are right this second, or how good their season is, meaning all the data points are measured equally. They've never answered that question.
With Florida State losing their quarterback, is there a pretty good chance maybe they might not even get represented to the playoff because of their quarterback? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Even if they win the games, that they'll leave them out?
No, I guess my question would be, I don't know enough about it. That's why I'm asking you. I always thought that good teams have good, they have good backup players. I mean, they were saying the same thing about Oklahoma, but I don't know how much that impacts the game. I just don't know. I mean, maybe it does, but Dylan Gabriel, he was out, and they had another player in there. I think of course they almost got beat, but I don't know how much difference the quarterback, I mean, maybe it makes a big difference. I really don't know, Mark. I'm asking you, I guess, because, so is that what they're using, is the idea that they might not be quite as good without their quarterback in there?
Well,
I would
Florida
think it would
State
make it.
had one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and his backup has really only shown us in one game. That was 2 years ago against Louisville, where he came in and played rather well and led a comeback win. But that's been the only time that he's played meaningful snaps. So I believe that the committee should hold their judgment until they actually see Florida State's backup quarterback Tate Rodemaker play against Florida and then against Louisville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but isn't it the kind of the expression, the sum is greater than the parts or something like that? You can put in a backup quarterback, and I don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't make a difference. I'm just saying it doesn't really. You have a good player, a good team. I don't know that one player changes anything all that much. Am I wrong about that?
Sure, they've lost one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Well, I know,
I'm
but
expecting them not to be as good, but I still believe that they should be given the opportunity to show what they can do.
I guess the question I have is whether they should even were they in the top four? I didn't quite catch your.
They're at number 5.
Oh, they're right out the outside of it.
They dropped a spot. They were raised. Washington was raised above Florida State.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, I don't know. I guess at least they got the right 4 in there so far. I can't complain too much, I guess. That's about who I think should be in there too, is the 4 that they're picking. So not that I have to be right about it. If that's what they're going to go with is the 4 that they have in there, I don't have a problem with it.
And if those 4 continue to win, and of course one of them is going to play Ohio State, Michigan play, then we're going to have a very clear-cut 4. We're going to have 4 undefeated teams.
Unless it might not be one of those things though where the loser doesn't drop much, Mark, because if we have the top, I have Ohio State and Michigan top 1 and 2. I don't know that they'll drop out of my top 4. They might. I'm not saying they won't. But and I use a mathematical formula. It might be that the loser might still be. I mean, I don't think they will, to be honest, unless it's like an overtime game. But there's a chance that the loser might still be in my top 4. I don't think they will be because there's too many good teams this year, but there might be.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying what would be fair, though, is if there are 4 undefeated teams, that they would make the playoffs and not a 1-loss Ohio State or Michigan.
Yeah, I understand. I just kind of think that as long as they get the right 4 in there, I guess I can't say too much about it. I just hope they're using the right metrics is all. I just kind of hope they are. All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you calling.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
They are serving up one of many nightmare scenarios on ESPN right now. They've got Alabama winning the SEC championship, Michigan defeating Ohio State, winning the Big Ten title, and then Florida State, Texas, and Oregon all win conference championships. So you would have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that you have to look at. And that's just one of many, but that's a pretty logical one to go with. Michigan and Florida State would be undefeated conference champions. So they're in. Then the committee would have to distinguish between Alabama, Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Washington, and Ohio State as 1-loss teams. Well, Alabama, Oregon, and Texas would be the 3 champions. So I would think, wow, yeah, you'd have to really size up the 3 resumes of Alabama, Oregon, and Texas and see which 2 would make it. I don't know if you guys are checking that out right now. We're going to go to Mooley on the line. What's going on, man?
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So the last guy actually was mentioning something I was just so interested in, and I just want to elaborate more because he mentioned about making a formula, and just so people can have a more clear understanding of what the committee is evaluating on the and that's a great idea. It's something that could help create more discussion around college football and also be able to just analyze it better, right? My thing is, okay, well, how do you even begin making a formula? Because my thought is also there could be teams who may look worse given a certain sets of data points. Let's say we're depending on what we evaluate, right? Some teams may look worse compared to what is evaluated versus some other teams that may look better than what maybe they actually are, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, the mathematical formula, whatever that is, let's say it's the BCS formula.
Hello?
So when you say a team is actually better or worse than their mathematical formula, based on who?
Well, I'm saying based on it, based on how they actually are as a team. Like maybe a team might the formula says what they are better than what they are, and then later on we found out, oh, well, maybe they weren't quite as good than what this formula has made it out to be, or maybe this team is worse, or
Well, that happens whether we have humans voting or we have mathematical calculations that we find out that teams are better or worse later. That happens with anything, any kind of evaluation.
right. You're right, and I'm just saying, even after a full season, I feel like even if we do develop a formula, I feel like there's still going to be people who there's still going to be like discontent over what should be evaluated, or how this formula should be, or oh, this may not be right, maybe we should evaluate this. When I personally feel like sports, it's more just dependent on what like on what how the team is built, because it's not just analyzing. Like, I'll take for example, comparing a team by, like, let's say if you want to compare two teams to see who's better, and you just check off like which team is better by position groups. I don't think that's the proper way. For example, just saying, oh, this guy is better quarterback, this team is better running back, line, etc. It's not always going to be the better team, right? There's also play styles involved. There's also how that team performs against certain other teams, etc. And yeah, just let me know if what I'm saying so far makes sense.
Sure. Absolutely. It does.
Yeah, and that's where I'm just saying is just like, yeah, even if there is a formula, maybe there could be a scenario where some team gets overvalued or undervalued, which I'm sure you understand what I've been saying. Is what I've been saying. You understand?
Well, it sounds like the formula that you're proposing or talking about is more based on a measurement of players and position groups and their effectiveness. Whereas in the past, with the BCS formula in particular and other formulas, those were all based on the results on the field, the results meaning the score, and then like yardage totals, and trying to measure the dominance or lack thereof of each performance by a team, and then measuring that against the strength of the schedule.
Right. What I was just giving was just an example of what you could value, and obviously you can value multiple things and give them different weights, right? All I'm saying is there's still like how do you say, things that may not be as easily measured, that you may not see, or some things where you're just like, hey, well, this team does this a certain way, where like you just have to like maybe evaluate them a little differently. I know I'm kind of speaking in very vague terms, so
Yeah. So are you proposing that we take the human element completely out of it?
I'm proposing to leave it in there,
Oh, okay.
because with the formula, and again, a formula might lead to the best results in terms of picking the right teams for a playoffs. I'm just saying that it's not going to just be a solution. There's still going to be people who going down the line will still be like discontent in some certain scenarios or some years. Hey, maybe this year this team should have been in.
See, I would propose a way, and I already have many times on here, propose a way to eliminate the human factor and also eliminate the computer factor. And people would say, then how in the world are you going to select these playoff teams? Well, the way to do it would be to reduce the conferences to the size where every team can play every team within a conference. So you don't have missing games within conferences. And then number two, you have a NFL type scheduling system. I'm not proposing completely like the NFL, a carbon copy of the NFL, but a formula that will make the scheduling equitable for all the teams in the country. And then you can just simply go by the standings to select the playoff teams, just like the NFL does.
So my question is, how would you evaluate like out of conference strength, and from that, how would you evaluate how strong a conference is if they're just gonna if we're gonna be more focused on playing each other? Well, not more focused, but yeah.
So what I would do would be to, let's say everybody plays 4 non-conference games. I'm just throwing it out there. Play 4 non-conference games. Well, the formula would take last year's results and a projection of how better or worse each team's going to be, and it would put together an equitable non-conference schedule for everyone. And then we could better trust the records of these teams if they were playing like equitable non-conference schedules and they were playing everyone in their conference. Then we could trust the record being a true indicator of how good the team is.
That is a great thing you proposed. The first thing that really jumps out is what you said about past year performance. I'm one who believes you can't completely eliminate and say, oh well, we just had to look at the results this year. I think 2 teams you can look at is Georgia and TCU. TCU is much significantly has performed worse than what they did last year, and then Georgia has still performed well. Some people may have been doubting in the beginning, or saying, oh, they've kind of struggled against teams, but they are still ranked high because of what they put up, and it was evident that they were sleepwalking, correct? So my only thing is, how would like someone like a formula be able to calculate something like that in 2 different scenarios such as that?
Okay, this is how I would do it. So again, I would take the records and the relative strength of all the teams in the country from the previous season, and I would give everyone in Power 5 a non-conference schedule of a composite 500 record from the previous season.
Okay.
So if you were playing 4 teams, if you're Purdue, you're going to play 4 teams from the previous season that went 500. And if you're Alabama, you're going to play 4 teams that went 500. If you're Fresno State, whoever.
And sorry to interrupt. These 4 teams, are they only in conference, out of conference, or both?
No, these are non-conference games.
Non-conference, okay.
And then I've mapped all this out and shot videos and so forth. But and then if you put a committee that can't control the schedule, but they work within these parameters, then they can make a judgment as to, okay, Michigan State was 8-4 last year, but it's not expected that they're going to be as good this year. And they can give some nuance to that as long as they stay within those parameters. And everyone's going to have an equitable. Now, you can't predict the future. So, of course, some teams are going to have tougher schedules than others. That's inevitable. But it's going to be so much closer to what it is than what it is right now if you go by that formula. And then everyone in conference play should be playing each other. I know what I'm proposing is never going to happen because we're drifting in the other direction. We're expanding conferences to insane levels to which there are, in the Big Ten next year, we're going to have every team in the Big Ten not play 8 teams from their own conference.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to have to determine a champion out of that. we're going to have teams that don't play each other, and there's going to have to be a tie-breaking system between teams that never faced each other to determine who's better.
Yeah, that's a good point. You said you mentioned this in other videos, so I definitely have to look out for those.
Yeah, I'll have to
But
bring it back and size it up again. Think of this. Think of how ludicrous this is. There was a possibility this year, and it was talked about quite often. It didn't happen, but that Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan would all go 11-1. They would all beat each other. So they would all go 11-1, and therefore all 8-1 in the Big Ten, having defeated each other. And so what's the tie-breaking system? Well, if you go through the Big Ten's tie-breaking system, every tie-breaking slot would be a tie, because those tiebreakers are written with an assumption that those teams are losing to other teams. But in this case, they will have all been undefeated against everybody. So if you go all the way down the list of tiebreakers, they're all ties. Common opponents, tie. Record within the division, tie. Record against the other division, tie. You've got to go down about 8 spots, and then you finally come to this qualifier. The team that played the 3 teams with the best record in the other division. So I shot a couple videos in the last couple weeks when this was still in play. And we are looking at a situation where, let's say, the 3 teams that Ohio State played in the Big Ten West went 14-13 in the conference. And the 3 teams that Michigan played went 13-14. And the 3 teams that Penn State played out of the Big Ten West went 13-14. So you are making a determination on who's going to win a championship just because you played 3 teams that went 14-13, and these 2 teams played 3 teams that went 13-14. And that's going to be your distinguishing point to determine a champion? That doesn't prove anything.
I get what you're saying for sure. And what I'm about to say is kind of obvious, but also that scenario is kind of because Big Ten needs to eliminate divisions. But that being said, I do get your point. I remember also earlier in the season when people were like, oh, what if LSU beats Bama? Well, then I think like the tiebreaker was the next best team, what their record was against the next best team in the division, which was A&M at the time. All 3 had beaten A&M. And then like the tiebreaker just started going like down. I mean, obviously that didn't happen. Bama beat LSU and then Georgia beat Ole Miss. So, but I'm saying if that were to occur, that would be 3 teams in one division with 1 loss in the playing against each other and then beating up the other teams within that division. So no, I definitely see what you're trying to say. And also I do like how you propose. I understand where you're now coming from now when you say have all the teams play each other within the conference to kind of like eliminate these factors and also just being able to get a good grasp on the teams while also keeping like the bit of nuance that you mentioned earlier. So
yeah, we're going to see all sorts of scenarios as these conferences get larger where the two best teams, or the 2 teams with the best record, will be selected, of course, to go to the conference championship game. But let's say there's a 3-way tie for first place and they didn't all play each other, or there's a 3-way tie for second place and they all didn't play each other. That's what we've got this year in the Big 12. Right now, there's a 3-way tie for second place and not all the teams played each other.
Yeah, and that's kind of bogus. Okay.
And it's going to become more and more frequent because the conferences are so large. Now we're dealing with 12-team conferences, let's say, and 14-team conferences that play 9 games. But when next year we're going to be at 16 and 18, we're going to have 2 16-team conferences and an 18-team conference. Yeah,
I guess that's just a problem for later. I mean, I haven't even thought that far. So,
All right, man. Well, I
well,
appreciate you calling.
well, I appreciate. Is it okay if I ask one more thing
Sure.
before I go? So, one thing also was just Florida State. They've been the thing. They've been kind of in the news because of the quarterback going down. And there's one thing I wanted to say is I understand the scenario where people were saying, "Oh well, what if they win all out? But could you still leave like a one loss, like SEC champion, like Alabama, for example, or some other team out in place of, or like a Texas for Florida State?" And and at first I was kind of agreeing with it too, but then I thought for a second, wait a minute, Louisville right now is ranked 10th in the country. Even if you're not big on Louisville and you don't think as highly of a team they are, going by the committee's metrics, this is an undefeated conference champion that in the last game they beat a top 10 team. Shouldn't there be no question? Because honestly, I feel like people are overreacting in the moment, but then once that fact settles in, if that were to occur, then it's going to be less of a question as to whether Florida State should go. And I don't know how you feel about that.
I think that you're exactly right. I think that the only time that the committee will have an issue dealing with an injury that is valid is if a player got hurt, a quarterback, let's say, gets hurt at the end of a conference championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State's on its way. Let's say if this was totally different and Jordan Travis didn't get hurt last week and they are in the process of beating Louisville 38-14 in the conference championship game, and it's the last series of the game and Jordan Travis gets hurt. Now the committee has no idea how good the backup quarterback is, how he's going to play, how they're going to respond. They have nothing to go on. They're going into a selection blind. But in this scenario, they're going to be able to see his backup quarterback, Tate Rodemaker, play a 5-6 Florida team and a 10-1 Louisville team. So they're going to have 2 full games against quality competition to determine how good Florida State is with a backup quarterback.
Right. And I will ask you one more thing. Two is well, let's say that Florida State in this scenario, they went out, but they were really ugly wins.
Yeah.
And their offense physically looked ugly, but they were able to pull out 2 wins.
Yep.
Do you think they still are pretty much a guarantee? Because personally, for me, my argument was, well, even with Travis as quarterback, they had some pretty close wins earlier in the season, even when they had their starting quarterback.
Yep.
And they were still able to pull one out with the backup, even if he may not look as good as the starter, Do you feel like they could change?
Let's go to the most egregious example of that. If they win these 2 games 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, I still believe that they're an undefeated football team with a conference championship, that they should go in above 1-loss teams. I totally understand the argument that people think they're not as good, but they, at that point, how in the world do you look these guys in the face and tell them that despite doing everything that they possibly could and win every game in a conference championship, that you're going to allow teams that with 1 loss to supersede them? No, they earned the right to go play in the playoff.
I completely agree. And I feel like more people, this will be less of a discussion if that were to happen. I just personally feel the reason why it's talked about now is given like the backlash that some fans had for TCU making it after they got destroyed by Georgia. I think it's just kind of, if this were to happen last year, there wouldn't be as much discussion.
Yeah. And TCU did lose a game. So there's a difference there.
For sure.
They could have, there's an argument that they could have had a better resume and a better record, but there's no way for Florida State to be any better than 13-0.
That's true. Well, anyways, Mark, thank you so much for answering answer my questions. Have a good one.
You too. All right. Let's check in with Mike tonight. Mike, what's going on tonight?
What's up, Mark? Can you hear me?
I can.
Any echo? Everything's good?
Everything's good.
Oh, wow. Well, let me just tell you something. That's the single longest I've ever waited on hold for anyone in the world ever in my life. So,
I feel honored. Thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
We got you here.
All right. Explain to me, because my only problem with your thing is with your ranking. How do you have Florida? I don't even care about Washington at 3.
Okay.
Florida State, how are they 4 and Michigan's 5?
All right. Let's rank Michigan's wins. What is Michigan's best win?
Penn State.
Okay. They beat Penn State. They're 9-2.
Yeah,
Give me
number 10 team on the road. Right?
Yes. Give me Michigan's second best win.
Maryland.
Okay. 6-5 Maryland, who's lost to Northwestern and Illinois. Okay. What is Michigan's third best win?
I don't know. I'd have to have him. Let me think.
Okay. I'll tell you. Rutgers is 6-5.
Rutgers.
Those are the only 3 teams that they've defeated that have a winning record in Power 5 play. Okay.
Right.
Florida State, well, they've got a win against LSU. They're 8-3. They've got a win against Clemson. They're
LSU.
7-4. Pardon me?
Okay. No, I was going to say LSU's not good.
Oh, Maryland's better than LSU. Got it.
I don't think they're better than LSU, but go ahead. You said LSU. What's their other
What
win?
I'm in the process of doing is explaining to you rather easily that Florida State has a better run of wins than Michigan does. And it's really not that debatable.
Okay. I'm not debating it. So what did you have Michigan at last week?
5.
The week before that, you had them at 5?
Oh, I had them at 4.
Okay. What made them go to 5?
Because Washington beat one of the 12 to 15 best teams in the country, and Michigan struggled against a 6-5 team.
Struggled against a 6-5 team.
Yeah,
I disagree. But
did you see him play Maryland? You don't think that game was a struggle? Would they dominate that game?
It wasn't. They were. No, but let me. But Mark, come on. They were never really.
Come on.
They were never really in trouble in that game. They were trying to get out of there. Yes, they didn't dominate. They didn't look as good as they did. It was one of our worst. It was probably our worst game of the year. We didn't look good at all. I didn't like it either. I'm just saying, but it's a tough. Let me tell you something. Right now, what's going on with Harbaugh, and I'm not using it as an excuse for this game. I'm not, but I'm just telling you, it's a difference. We're feeling it. The players are feeling it a little bit.
Okay. Well, if I don't take that into consideration.
No.
If you're telling me to take that into consideration, you're actually giving me reason to rank Michigan lower.
Why?
Because if Harbaugh's not going to be there next week and he's not been there for the last 2 weeks, well.
So, what does that mean? You said it. You said you can't lower FSU if their quarterback's not hurt. You said, their quarterbacks are. You can't do that.
We've seen Michigan.
No, it's the same thing.
Harbaugh. No, it's not the same thing. We've seen Michigan without Harbaugh. We've not seen Florida State without Jordan Travis. When we see them without Jordan Travis and see that their play is significantly worse, then we will rank them accordingly. I'm not ranking a team based on what
I'm not. I'm just asking you for why you have FSU over Michigan. I just want you to explain it to me.
I'm not saying this is.
I don't like the way Michigan looked either.
This is what you need to understand. Number one, I don't have a recency bias, meaning that that Michigan game against Maryland, yes, that factored in the rankings, but I don't overrank. Everybody gets locked into what happened last weekend. And that's a big determinant, but that's only one game out of 11. So don't think that I just knocked down Michigan because they struggled with Maryland. But let's also understand Florida State has just won more games against quality teams than Michigan has.
I don't know about Clemson being a quality team.
Okay, so Maryland's a quality team, and
I know
Rutgers are quality teams, and Clemson's not a quality team.
All I said was
Clemson's a better team than Maryland, and Clemson.
How much better is Clemson this year than Rutgers?
They are decided.
Well, they're a better team than them. Yes,
than Maryland.
I still don't understand why you move them. That's my thing.
I moved them because
if you don't have reason,
beat one of the 10 or 15 best teams in the country.
So you
and Michigan played about.
You do. Hey.
Okay, let me try to explain it this way, Mike. First of all, don't get caught up.
I understand it.
My rankings based on resume versus who I believe are the best teams. Those aren't the same. I said from the beginning of the season, I believe Georgia's the best team and Michigan might be the best team. That's what I was saying at the beginning of the season, but that didn't impact my rankings. I didn't have Michigan.
No, I know that.
First game. I didn't even have them ranked because they played a bad team, and that's not how my rankings work.
Yes. And I agreed with it when you didn't have the rank because I understand how your rankings are now.
Yeah, I'm evaluating that Florida State has a better resume than Michigan. Now, that will change drastically if Michigan beats my number 2 team in the country.
Right.
I might rank Michigan number 1 in the country.
Do you think?
And I will have all Ohio State people yelling at me for doing that. But
well, no matter what you do, you're going to have people aren't going to like it. But what do you think this year with Georgia, Michigan against Georgia, Ohio State against Georgia? You think it's different than the last couple of years? I do. I think Georgia's beatable this year. I think they look the best.
Well, Georgia doesn't have a defense that nearly as good as the one that Michigan saw 2 years ago. They still have a really, really good defense, but that defense that Georgia had in 21 that Michigan played was
like
one of the best defenses we've seen in recent times. Now, Stetson Bennett is a more mobile quarterback than Carson Beck. Carson Beck's playing very well, but Stetson Bennett can beat teams with his legs. For as much crap as that guy took forever about not being good enough, he obviously, threw that in the face of all of his critics and proved to be a championship quarterback. But Georgia, I believe Georgia's probably the best team, but I'm not convinced of it without a doubt. I think that Ohio State and Michigan can both beat Georgia. I don't know that they would, but I think they could.
Oh, yeah. I definitely think they could. But okay, I had something else for you, too. I had to ask you something, but now I forgot. Do you like McCord?
Do I like him? I've never met him.
Do you think he plays football? He plays football well?
I think he's getting better. I think he's getting better every week. I think he's one of the 20 best quarterbacks in the country, something in that range, which is certainly a drop off from CJ Stroud, who was arguably the best quarterback in the country.
Yeah, Stroud looks tremendous this year in the pros. I don't. I agree with you, McCord. The only thing I give him credit for that Notre Dame game. He drove down on the road in a big spot and won a game against a good team. I give him credit for that.
Yep. And just one other thing
that's it. That's all I.
And just one other thing real quick before I let you go, Mike, that you got to take into consideration too with these rankings. Not every place in these rankings are created equal, meaning there could be a big gap between 1 and 2, but there could be like next to no gap between 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's one thing that I see right now. Like the difference between Ohio State and 2 and Michigan at 5 is like, it's basically the Notre Dame game. It's basically nothing. It's actually less than the Notre Dame game because Michigan's been better than Ohio State in all the other games against all the other opponents, except maybe Michigan State and Minnesota. They both just killed them, and Purdue. But Michigan was better against Rutgers. Michigan was better against well, they were both about the same against Penn State. Of course, Michigan had to do it on the road. So just understand that, again, that as well. All right, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there in whatever way that you celebrate it. So we appreciate you all being here. As always, we've got Jackson on the line, and I can always anticipate that Jackson's going to bring some good fats and stats with him.
I do my best, Mark. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I will say a little while ago, that was some Tuesday night entertainment right there, especially for the Thanksgiving season.
What would that be?
Oh, that little discussion you had with Mike just now. That was pretty.
Just trying to take him through the games.
Yeah.
Through the results.
So I was looking at the rankings just now, and I was looking at where Florida State is 5. And I know everybody's like saying, oh, it's because that Travis injury. I doubt that highly. I think it's because of the wins. And Washington's got more of a strength of wins. Whereas like for example, the win against Arizona. Now, when you're watching Washington, Arizona week 5, you're not thinking, oh, this is going to be a big win, right? But later on, Arizona's gotten better.
So
they're
sorry, Jackson, you're bringing up a good point. So what you're bringing up right there, and I say this all the time, is that people need to understand that if you're doing this the right way, and I do my best. So full disclosure here, folks, if I had a staff of like 18 people, or if I had some great database, I would do my rankings the same way with the same approach, but I would really, I'm not going to spend like 18 hours working on my, I'd spend a couple hours working on it to make sure I get it right. But Jackson is exactly right. If you're going to do these rankings correctly, then you're just not looking at, okay, well, they were 7 last week and they beat a good team, so we're going to raise them to 6. No, you got to look at all the previous games. And like Jackson's saying, Arizona is a prime example. When USC beat Arizona 5 or 6 weeks ago, Arizona was an afterthought. Was that a good win? No, they barely beat them. It was triple overtime. That's a bad win for USC. Well, that's totally different today because Arizona's played USC to triple overtime. They stayed within 1 score of Washington. They beat Oregon State. They annihilated Washington State. They obviously beat Colorado, and now they've got another win. They beat UCLA by 3 scores. That win is just skyrocketed. So you got to look at all the past games and see how those results have changed. Exactly.
Yeah, and I noticed that Florida State's win over Clemson unfortunately got worse after
Yes,
Clemson after that overtime win.
but now it's getting better.
True.
So Clemson's obviously beaten Notre Dame and Miami, not Miami. Who they beat? North Carolina State a couple of weeks ago. They just beat
North Carolina,
Georgia Tech
Notre
and North
Dame,
Carolina. Yeah,
Georgia, Georgia Tech.
yeah.
And
So they beat an
unfortunately
8-3, 2 8-3 teams and a 6-5 team in the last 3 weeks.
yeah. I will say it's a good thing that North Carolina is not in the top 25. I mean, that Georgia Tech Virginia loss, that's really kept them out.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point right there. North Carolina is still not in the top 25 at 8-3, and Tennessee is at 7-4. Yeah, those are two ugly losses. Although I think we tend to give Georgia Tech a bit of a hit when they're really not an awful, awful football team. They are 6-5. I actually snuck North Carolina back into my rankings this week at 24 or 25.
Well, and I know there's a lot of people that aren't too happy about Tennessee being ranked. I mean, I know I'm not, but most notably, Locked On Pac-12 host, Locked On Oregon Ducks host Spencer McLaughlin has said that Tennessee, he's pretty sick and tired of Tennessee being ranked. It's such a joke. I replied a little while ago, if Tennessee wasn't in the SEC, I doubt that they'd be ranked. And he said they wouldn't be. See, Utah.
Yeah, I don't get that myself. Let's pull up their schedule. The best team they've beaten is what? Kentucky. Texas A&M 7-4. That's their best win. Then Kentucky. And they've lost the last 2 weeks by 4 scores. And I know that's no shame in losing to Georgia that badly, but Missouri's a good team, but you shouldn't, if you're a number 17 team in the country, you shouldn't be losing to Missouri by 29 points. Lose it by a field goal, sure. They played a decent game against Alabama, but they have no wins. They just have nothing to speak of.
And you most certainly shouldn't be losing in Gainesville to the Florida Gators.
Oh, that's a horrible, horrible loss. Yes.
I mean, Gainesville's like kryptonite for them. Good grief.
Yeah. So they've got a 2-score loss to 5-6 Florida. They've got a 2-score loss to Alabama. No shame in that. And they were winning at halftime. But yeah, these last 2 games, and it's not so much who they've lost to, but it's by how much, and that they've gotten 2 okay wins, but they should have, to be number 17 in the country, they should have a handful of wins that are decent wins. They've got 2.
Well, that UTSA win looks mighty good because that's the last loss for UTSA, and they're still in AAC contention, especially that Black Friday battle against Tulane.
But how valid is UTSA's record? Who have they beaten? They lost to Houston. They lost to Army. And now they've ripped off all these wins.
True.
Who's decent out of those teams?
Texas State looks like the best win out of that bunch. And South Alabama was not South Alabama, but South Florida, excuse me. Where's my brain going today? Yeah, South Florida looks pretty good, especially since South Florida kept it close with Bama in week 3.
What's South Florida, like 5-6?
Yep. If they win their last game, they're bowl eligible.
Okay. So these are not good wins. They're beating 5-win group of 5 teams. Now, here's the game right there. Obviously, that Tulane game is big in terms of rankings.
Ooh,
where does the conference stand?
Well, at the moment, Tulane is 7-0 in conference play. UTSA is 7-0 conference play, and SMU is 7-0 in conference play. Now, SMU is just going to get to sit and watch the Tulane UTSA game, but they have to beat Navy in order to clinch a spot in the AAC title
Ooh, I
game.
want to look at this. I'm curious about this. Look at that. I did not realize that. Call this up here. Interesting. So we got Tulane and Texas San Antonio. Since you are the master, Jackson, of remembering who plays at what time and on what network, who's got that game?
Okay, SMU Navy, I believe, is 11 a.m. on ESPN2. That I do
Meaning noon
believe.
Eastern, right?
Yup.
Yeah, ESPN2. And then Tulane and Texas San Antonio?
ABC 2:30 p.m.
Nice. Okay. Wow. So, interesting. Good stuff.
Yeah. I'm curious to see if SMU can win the AAC in their final year of that conference before they join the ACC.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know Steve Helwick, a good buddy of yours, and the reporter for Underdog Dynasty, he said tonight that he is not to. He was talking about how SMU is below Liberty in the CFP standings because they scheduled Oklahoma TCU non-conference play and Liberty didn't. He's not too thrilled about that. I am happy that Liberty's in the top 25. Don't get me wrong, but I was pretty happy till I saw that. But I will say I'm glad that Mr. Helwick brought that point up.
Oh, yeah. He's all over it. He is all over it. This Big 12 situation, I love this situation. Now, Oklahoma State obviously can wrap it up with a win against BYU, but this could be fun if there's an upset there.
Yeah. But I will say, don't ever put yourself in a position where you need somebody to lose.
Think of this, Jackson. Texas Tech, Texas, Iowa State, Kansas State, correct?
Right.
This weekend, West Virginia plays Baylor.
Yep. The bare
Oklahoma's
necessities.
got TCU. Okay. And Oklahoma State's got. This is not going to happen, but just imagine Texas Tech beats Texas, Iowa State beats Kansas State, and West Virginia beats Baylor. Oklahoma loses to TCU, and Oklahoma State loses to BYU. There would be a 6-way tie for second place. They'd all be 6-3.
That'd be pretty big.
That would be awesome. I would love to see that.
That is true. That'd be pretty fun. I know Neil Brown's a pretty happy man because I know that he needs that Baylor win to kind of solidify his position for 2024. I'm glad that nobody's being negative towards Matt Campbell anymore about all that hot seat discussion. Because I remember earlier in the year, everybody was talking about that Iowa State Ohio game. And I was like, come on, it's week 3, not week 12.
Yeah, and obviously Matt Campbell's done a nice job losing his quarterback and his best running back since week 1.
Oh, yeah. I've been pretty impressed with them, and I hope they have another good year next year. I am sad about Kansas's QB situation, though.
Yeah.
So it was. I hope they get a 10-win season next year, but 2024 is looking like a comeback play, the year of the comeback players in the Big 12. Missouri's gonna have to beat Arkansas, which they definitely should.
Yeah, they should. Sam Pittman's gotten the vote of confidence, and he's coming back apparently.
Ooh, that's bad. If you're getting a vote of confidence, you're on a hot seat for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Well, they came out and said that he's going to be around for next year.
Oof. I always get nervous. Somebody's getting a vote of confidence. I'm like, oh boy, you're under a lot of pressure, especially in SEC country. I'm looking at Florida State Louisville again, and we know that the ACC cannot afford to have Florida State and Louisville lose this Saturday. They cannot afford that. And there's nothing more that Kentucky and Florida would love to do is play spoiler for their rivals.
Yeah, and teams like Alabama and Texas and the Pac-12 would love to see Florida State out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
And Louisville. Sure.
I will say that even though I know Auburn lost to New Mexico State, I'm still pretty nervous about Bama going against Auburn all the same because everybody's going to bring their A game against Bama.
Yeah, well, you remember as well as I do, and biggest Bama fans, it's only been a couple of years ago that Bryce Young and company went in there and had to pull a game out in overtime. That if who was that? Tank Bigsby. If he would have not run the ball out of bounds, they would have been able to kill the clock.
Oh yeah, that was like the first 4 overtime game in the history of the rivalry.
Yep.
So that was pretty big. Oh man, we got ourselves a beautiful slate this week.
Yes, we do. It is rivalry week. Yep.
Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and then the Saturday and Sunday and Monday night. Always looking forward to some college football and NFL. And in the meantime, Mark, you have a good night. Stay safe and stay warm. It's cold out.
Thank you, Jackson. Have a good night. All right. We've got the link in the description section. We've also got it in the chat. Otherwise, we will take one more look at all of this. Keep in mind that we've got a lot of good things coming up here. The Voice of College Football just released a video right before we came on tonight. Released a video with the Jimbo Fisher situation at Texas A&M, meaning who's going to replace Jimbo Fisher. Talked about candidates there. Check out that video. Also, we've looked at the Syracuse opening, who could replace Dino Babers there. I'm going to do a breakdown of Ohio State and Michigan against common opponents. We've got the live stream that we produced yesterday with Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast. Also released a Michigan breakdown with Nelson Hubble of Maize and Blue Review. That was just dropped this afternoon. Check that out. We've got Zach Smith coming up Wednesday at 2. So we've got quite a lineup here on Wednesday. My Wednesday lineup. Let's look at my schedule on Wednesday. Goodness gracious. Let's see. Our Wednesday schedule, folks, is packed. We've got 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Ohio State Buckeyes live with the crew over on our Buckeyes channel, Steve Hellwagon, Kevin Noonan, Tony Gerdeman. 12:30 Eastern, I will do a record on Clemson, South Carolina. We did the South Carolina side today with Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show. And now we're going to combine that with Jason Priester from Clemson Tigers, allclemsontigers.com. We'll record that at 12:30. So we'll be looking out for our Clemson, South Carolina breakdown. At 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm recording with Melissa Treebwasser, TCU. We already did the Oklahoma live show, so we'll combine that for a preview on TCU and OU. Then you see at 2 p.m. Eastern, we're going live with Zach Smith, Ohio State talk right here with Best Damn Media jumping on at the end. Then I got to record the 3:15 Michigan podcast with Steve Dace. And then I'm coming back here at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Nebraska Cornhuskers live on the Nebraska channel. Never mind my own personal business meetings there. 6 p.m. Eastern, we've got David Waters from Gators Breakdown joining us on FSU Live. And then at 7 p.m., we've got Miami live with Cam Underwood, State of the U, as we always do on the Hurricanes channel. Then we've got our Texas live show, Bleeding Burnt Orange. Matthew Miller, of course, that's coming up on Wednesday night. We've got a Pac-12 chat show that is only going to see a few more weeks before everything to do with the Pac-12 is going to go away. as it will here at the Voice of College Football as well. And we'll figure out what we're going to do with all of our Big Ten new members to the conference and what we're going to do with Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. All right, Matthew's here to talk some Texas and the rankings. Matthew, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Mark. You can hear me, right?
I got you.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so the rankings. Okay, first off, I want to clarify something. I left a super chat for you criticizing Tennessee. That wasn't for you. That was for the committee, and I'm still angry at the committee because why the hell is Tennessee ranked?
Well, sorry I missed your super chat. I'll post it here in a second. And yes, I had Tennessee ranked at one point, but they have not been in my rankings for the last 2 weeks. Yeah, I don't know if you were around just a few minutes ago. We were going through their schedule. I can't explain it. They've lost to a 5-6 Florida team by 2 scores. They played Alabama tough. Okay, fine. They've lost the last 2 weekends by 4 scores to Georgia and Mizzou. And that's no big shame in losing to Georgia by 4 scores, and it's no shame in losing to Missouri on the road, but losing by 4 scores to Missouri, be competitive. You're the number 17 team apparently in the country. And you're losing by 29 points to Missouri when you've got no wins to back it up. A 1-score win against a 7-4 Texas A&M team. That's their best win. I'm right there with you.
Well, and for example, Georgia's 1, Missouri's 9, Tennessee's 17 in this ranking, correct? There's the exact same difference between the two, and Missouri lost by freaking 3 or 4 to Georgia, where Tennessee get lost
9.
by 4 scores. So it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and Missouri's beaten Kansas State.
Exactly.
They've got some other good wins. Yeah.
And I really believe this, and I'm getting even more worried now. If Alabama beats Georgia, they are going to use those type of wins to justify Georgia getting in over Texas. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. I'm just letting everyone know that right now. Georgia, if they lose the SEC championship game, is still going to get in.
Yeah, and it's a good point that you're making because Tennessee at 17, who knows what's going to happen, but they're going to beat Vandy, obviously. So they're going to be 8-4. So they're going to continue to prop them up in that same range. They may go up a spot or down a spot depending on what happens around them, but they're basically going to hold firm around 17 with a win against Vandy. And yeah, that's going to be on Alabama's resume.
Yep. And that's what they're going to do. But I know how this committee works. I've seen them do their dark magic over the years, so I know exactly what they're going to do. Just like they did. I think they did Kansas dirty. Because if Kansas had their backup, I'm not asking for Jalen Daniels. I'm asking for their backup QB. They beat Kansas State this week, and they would have beat Texas Tech the week before. They would be 9-2 right now. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, even regardless of that, if you're going to put Tennessee at 7-4, and Kansas is now 7-4, and Tennessee drops 3 spots, losing by 4 scores the last. I don't know what they were the week before. They only dropped a couple spots after losing to Mizzou by a zillion points, where Kansas is competing. Like
with
they're
a third
playing,
string.
Yeah, with a third string, and they're playing good teams, and they're competing.
It doesn't make any sense. And also, here's another point. Kansas State, Missouri played each other. Kansas State lost on the road on a 61-yard field goal.
Yeah.
And Kansas was competitive with that team, almost beat them with a third-string quarterback, whereas Tennessee got blown off the field.
Yeah.
Versus Missouri. None of this makes sense.
It is insane. That sounds like it's just going to be something I could just do an easy video on. that is the most egregious. Yeah, I've got a huge issue with that. Yes. And obviously other people do as well. That's terrible.
Yeah, I know what they're doing, and I know what's going to happen, and it's going to be frustrating for it. And again, we have to take care of business. We have still probably 1, maybe, hopefully 2 games to play. So it may not even matter. But if it comes down to something like that in our best season in over a decade, it's really going to be frustrating. It really is.
I usually don't make comments like this because, again, the dynamics of the rankings are more than just looking at one team and saying, okay, they dropped 5 spots, because it has to do with other teams. Obviously, it's not done in a silo, but Oregon State lost by 2 points to Washington, the number 4 team, undefeated team in the nation, and they dropped 5 spots, losing 22-20.
Yeah, and Tennessee has lost. Let's see, they lost to Missouri, and who'd they play this week? They've lost to Georgia. So in the last 2 weeks, they've gotten blown out and only dropped 9 spots.
Yeah,
with no good wins, none, 0.
Yeah.
So
Oregon State's beaten. They've won games against Utah and UCLA and somebody else in there that they've defeated. That's a pretty good football team. And no egregious losses, close losses. They lost to Arizona on a last-second field goal. They lost to, again, Washington by 2. Their other loss was...
they beat UCLA, did they not?
Oh, they lost to Washington State. That's not the best of losses.
No. But that was also when Washington State was healthier earlier in the year. So
yeah, they were playing much better.
Yeah. So it is frustrating because I just don't, there's no rhyme or reason. That's my biggest issue with this committee. It always has been my biggest issue. It's like, whatever we feel like doing, we're going to do. And we don't have to justify shit with you guys at all.
Yeah. The way they justify it usually is, the thing is they've got like 5 to 10 things that they can grab to use, but they don't use them equally and in the same way with every team. They just use whatever justification works for that argument and ignore everything else.
Yeah, even like I understood why Oklahoma fans were angry when we were ranked ahead of them the first time, because guess what? They had just played like 2 weeks prior and they beat us, but then they used the same head-to-head to justify us being over Alabama. So there's no rhyme or reason. It's, I want to do whatever I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. This is why the first time this came out, I said, why can we not just use the BCS and in the top 4 teams? At least it's an unaffiliated party. It's a freaking computer that doesn't seem to have any bias, whereas this committee clearly has bias.
Yeah, the only thing I would like to have done with the BCS is just to make sure it should be run through like every season of major modern college football, in the last 50 years plus, just to make sure that there are no fallacies in it. Because we really don't know what the BCS, the computer itself, would have given us. Because again, that was only 1/3 of the final tabulation. It was still the AP vote, the coaches poll, and then the computers.
That's true. But also, I think someone does. I know they do on Twitter for a fact. I haven't checked it today for this ranking, but they do have BCS rankings on, like, someone still has that out there, because I've checked it out and they're usually pretty close to the committees, but there's always like 2 or 3 shakeups that are different. It's pretty interesting.
Well, let's see if we can find that.
That'd be awesome, because I've found it interesting. I used to follow it pretty religiously up until this year. I haven't really followed it up until this point. But it's just, I don't know I do know what's going to happen in certain scenarios, I think. But, I mean, it may not even come down to that, because if Ohio State wins out, Washington wins out, Florida State wins out, and Georgia wins out, we know the 4. So it'll be interesting. But, again, the Oregon one still bothers me. Like, if they kill Oregon State this week, fine, put them over us. But I don't understand that still, because based on your rankings, I still think we have more top 25 wins than they do. So it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I can't say that I really get that either. I think it's the close losses is what it is. And then obviously your comeback would be most of those were with a backup quarterback.
Correct. And also, I know people are saying, well, they're close wins. I agree. Texas should have blown out those games, and they were early. And then whatever happens in the late third quarter, whole fourth quarter, we go. Except that's the funny thing. We're capable of doing it, because versus Iowa State, we were pretty damn good in the fourth quarter. It's just, for whatever reason, this team takes their foot off the gas. I don't know why that is. That's also, I've heard people say we'd get blown out during the playoff. We wouldn't get blown out, because I've seen this team multiple times under Sark and even under Tom Herman play up to the competition. We played that 2019 LSU team very close. I think we gave them probably their second or third best game of the season. That's just what we do. I don't know why, but it is what we do. And certain matchups, I do agree. There are certain matchups I'd be really scared of. I obviously wouldn't want to play Georgia with the way they're playing right now, but I think we do match up better versus Ohio State and Michigan for the simple fact is we're the number 1 or number 2 rushing defense in the whole country, and we're great on third down. And their quarterback situations, to me, they don't scare me. So those two teams I think we match up better against. But like if you throw it around a lot, those teams scare me. Like Washington and Oregon would scare me. I don't really want to play them.
Okay. You'd rather play Ohio State or Michigan?
Just because of the matchup. They're very good teams, but because matchup wise, that's the only reason why.
Yeah. No,
But,
I get it.
yeah.
I get it. And it is about matchups. It's not who's better and these are the 5 best in this order and this is the way they would all match up against each other. Yeah.
The battle in the trenches in both those games would be super fun because Sweat and Murphy, I think, are the best defensive tackle combination. I don't think it's really close for Texas in the country. And then versus the offensive lines of Michigan and Ohio State, be really fun. I think you guys would probably do pretty well against our O-line. Our O-line's inconsistent, so it depends which one shows up. If the Alabama and Kansas State one show up, we'd be fine. If some of the other games, they show up like that, we'd probably be in a little bit of trouble. But you already mentioned it, guys. I'm here 7:30 Eastern time every Wednesday. And I will be here also Friday after the Texas Tech game.
Yeah. So let me type up a promo panel here. I'm scurrying to do so.
It is Bleeding Burnt Orange. Mark and I both agreed the name was not good enough to draw attention. I think this one's better. And it shows Texas, obviously, because we're the only burnt orange team in the country.
There it is, folks. It's right here on the main channel, also on the Big 12 channel that we would like to continue to grow and promote. And I guess we'll be moving to the SEC channel here in just a few weeks.
Yep, I've been promoting that as well. Everyone go follow both those. For now, it's Big 12. Next year, we'll be moving to the SEC, and that's going to be a good time as well.
Once we clear the playoff for the bowl game for Texas, we'll make that move. That's what we'll do. But 7:30 Eastern Wednesday night.
Yep. See you there, guys. Come join me.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. Have a good night.
It's a great time. And Matthew knows his Texas football. He knows college football across the board, but especially at the Longhorns. So you'll want to take part with Matthew's show. And he doesn't mind trolling, doesn't mind a challenge. So bring it. All right, folks. I believe we've hit the end of the line. I do appreciate Moose here with the Super Chat contribution. Michigan, the strength of record is 3. The strength of schedule is 59. Florida State is 62, and the strength of record is 4. I get that. Got it. Okay. There's also a diminishing return to that, meaning does it really matter if you're beating the 115th ranked team in the country or the 97th team in the country? So if you are a team that's that good, you're an elite team, you're in the top 5. I think it more matters that, so for example, think of it this way. Your team could have, after 2 games, the 66th ranked schedule in the country. Okay. And let's say you played number 65 and number 66. And that's how your team arrived at playing the 65th ranked schedule. But my team arrived at playing the 65th ranked schedule by playing the number 1 team in the country and the number 133 team in the country. Who do you think's played a tougher schedule? Well, I would say the team that's played the number 1 team in the country and number 133. Because if you're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country, who cares if you played number 65 or played number 125? It shouldn't matter. Florida State has better wins against better competition than Michigan does. And it's really not debatable. All right, Michigan's been more dominant. But it's not like Florida State is being Louisville. They're not like squeaking by every week. They've had one game against Boston College like that, where they played an inferior team, and that was the result. Okay. All right, folks. 11 a.m. Eastern time on the Ohio State channel. Buckeyes Live, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Then we'll be back here at 2 p.m. Eastern time on the main channel with Zach Smith and Best Damn Media. 4 p.m. Eastern time, Nebraska Live. And then we've got, goodness, Florida State at 6 and Miami at 7. I've got four live streams coming up on Wednesday right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Please hit the like button on the way out and subscribe. We've got about 65% of you that watch the videos that do not subscribe, are not subscribed. And big benefit to subscribing is that you click the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. And there we go. We'll see you on Wednesday. Go to games all the time, or you've got your heart set on that one huge matchup, go to ticketsmarter.com to save big. TicketSmarter technology gives you the best competitive prices on the secondary market. Your purchase price is safe and guaranteed. Use promo code BIG, B-I-G, to get $10 off of any purchase of at least $100, or the promo code BIG20, BIG20, to get $20 off of any purchase of at least $300. Use the promo code as many times as you'd like. There is no limit. Get in the game with ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. Think smarter, ticket smarter.